Okay.
Okay, and most people are on mute. I'd appreciate if you're not the presenter, if you would go on mute so we could keep the background noise to a minimum. And so first, let me introduce myself. I'm Carolyn Omperon. I am the chair of the Mid-Missouri group of the Sierra Club. And before we jump into our wonderful presentations for this evening, I wanted to just share a couple minutes on the upcoming activities and how you can always get more information about our activities. We have the Missouri website, which shows activities across the state, including ours, which is sc.org/mo. And then you can always, go to our website. That's our Gmail address in case you need more information and want to ask questions. And we try and put all these in our newsletter, which comes out at the beginning of the month. If you're not receiving that and you want to, you can contact us at this email address. Additionally, I wanted to tell you just real briefly about the Solarize Columbia program that we're doing. This program is a group buying program, and it is an opportunity for people in Columbia and Boone County to be able to purchase solar at group buying discount rates. And it's something that we're working on with several other nonprofits in town and the Sustainability Office of Columbia. And you can sign up. There's more information at solarizecolumbia.com. If you want to participate, there's a deadline to sign up by October 31st just to participate. And then you'll work out, buying and contracts and everything after that. Unless you're a residential customer and you want to qualify for the federal tax incentives, and then I would encourage you to sign up right away. Tomorrow there is a webinar being held on this with Columbia Water and Light. And Columbia Water and Light is going to go over their rebates and financing opportunities for their customers. Again, this is open to anyone in Boone County, but of course, Columbia Water and Light has some incentives. And so that's tomorrow, the 20th at 12:30. And you can get all the details in the Zoom link for that at sc.org/mo. Our next general meeting is going to be on September 10th. And our speaker is going to be Susan March, who has been on a personal mission to eliminate waste from her life. And I think sounds like she's pretty well done that. So she's going to share with us what she's learned. Then we have a chapter event coming up, chapter being the statewide group. Wednesday the 17th and Thursday the 18th. This event will be in the Ozark National Scenic Riverways. First day will be restoration work, and then the second day will be a fun float trip. And you can get all the information about that on the website as well. And then we hope to make the Walk for the Climate a really big event this year because of, all the things that are happening that are not good for the climate right now. And so that is September 21st. This will also be part of two national mobilizations for that day. One is called Sunday, and the other one is called Draw the Line. And so we really hope that you can join us for that and bring friends and family with you. We need a good turnout. Every month, the Sierra Club chapter staff hosts a online meeting that allows people across the state to collaborate. And it's also an opportunity for new members or just interested people to find out what we're doing across the state. And so that is coming up on Wednesday, the 24th. We try and hold a fun fall picnic every year. And so we've planned that for October 3rd. And so that is not up on the website yet, but we'll be getting more details out about that. And then I also just wanted to mention a couple of volunteer opportunities that you might be interested in. We always can use more outings leaders. Mike, who is one of our presenters tonight, is an outings leader and can tell you all about it. But there's also a lot of information that I can share. We will be having a booth at Mid-Missouri Pride Fest, which is October 4th and 5th. And so if anyone would like to help us in our booth with tabling, we would sure appreciate that. And if anyone is a building energy efficiency code interested party or advocate, we would love to get engaged with you, and you could really help us out to follow that issue both at the city and the county level in the future. So those are our announcements. I'm going to go ahead and go right into the introduction of our speakers after I admit the next person who's wants to get in. And so our first speaker tonight is going to be Mike Currier. And so Mike is holds a MA in plant systematics, and he has a really strong background to help us with this work of understanding the ecology of the Gans Creek Recreation Area, with a background as a field inventory biologist with the Missouri Department of Conservation, working as a conservation biologist for the Department of Natural Resources, and a DNR coordinator for Missouri Natural Areas Program. He also co-authored an important report documenting the terrestrial natural communities of the Crane Tract, which eventually became the Gans Creek Recreation Area. He is currently the chair of the Land Conservation Committee for Ozark Land Trust and an outings leader, as I mentioned before, for Sierra Club Mid-Missouri Group. And I'm going to go ahead before I turn it over to Mike and introduce our next speaker. After Mike will be Dr. David Diamond. David has a career as an ecologist starting in Texas, where he wrote the first classification of ecological systems for the state. And he's been done a lot of mapping of ecological systems since the early 1990s. He's currently an ecologist for the Missouri Resource Assessment Partnership at the University of Missouri, where he was director for 25 years. And we're also happy to say he serves on the Sierra Club Mid-Missouri Group Executive Committee, where he is a treasured member because of all of his expertise. So I am going to switch over here and stop sharing, and I am going to turn it over to Mike so that he can share.
Okay, let's see here. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, one and all. Thank you, Carolyn. I'm still working on sharing the screen. Oh, there we go. Okay, I think, yeah, I started here. Share. And I'm going to go to, well, I thought I was going to go to, there we go. Okay. Again, welcome, one and all. Thank you, Carolyn, for the introduction. And the title, I'm going to jump right in. The title of my presentation is the Gans Creek Nature Preserve, its role in maintaining the biodiversity of the Ozark Highlands. And I'm using the Gans Creek Nature Preserve as a conceptual designation. It's not actually designated as such, though there's precedent in earlier management plans for it being a nature preserve area, and you'll see that later on in the presentation. Gans Creek Nature Preserve was purchased by the City of Columbia in 2007. It was formerly the Crane Tract and formerly the Lofty Cliff Farm historically. It's 320 acres in size, and it's directly contiguous to Rockbridge State Park, at least the southern part is. And you could divide the Gans Creek recreational area into two parts. The northern part, which is a sports facilities complex that has soccer fields, cross-country track, and other sports venues. And then the southern, which I'm calling the Gans Creek Nature Preserve. And I want to make clear that this isn't currently a designation for this particular area, but it's an alternative vision for what we and myself and others who have been working on advocating for sensible development, we would like it to be considered as a nature preserve. And I'm going to borrow a little bit from Mark G. Anderson's study that was published in 2020 on resilient sites and connected landscapes, just to kind of frame this is a little bit of review for many of us, but it's kind of to look at various designations that really speak to the biological significance of Boone County and Southern Columbia. So Mark Anderson describes species diversity as being highly correlated with geophysical complexity, and this makes a lot of sense. The greater the variety of landforms, geology and soils, the greater number of species you're going to have. And that's pretty logical. It's a direct correlation. And borrowing this chart from that study, if you look at the distributions of species and natural communities of conservation concern, the concentration of red dots in the Ozark Highlands speaks to the biological significance of this ecoregion. The Ozark Highlands supports 160 endemic species. And on the left-hand side, these are species that don't occur in the Gans Creek Recreation Area or the Nature Preserve, but these are some of the state imperiled species in Boone County, including the cherry stone drop, running buffalo clover, which was discovered this year in a place that had been mined historically. And of course, we have the Indiana bat, gray bat, tricolored bat. Those are other species in Boone County. So when you're thinking about creating resilient sites and connected landscapes, how do you go about that? Well, we know from just studies, maybe even island biogeography, that when you need preserves greater than 500 acres in size to capture landscape diversity and provide core habitat. When a landscape is that size, it nullifies the edge effect. And so you have the core can support species and become, the core habitats can support source populations. And so the goal for anybody that's trying to do conservation really, including in Boone County, is to identify opportunities to build a landscape that has several core preserves, which are greater than 500 acres, interconnected by ecological corridors, and then actively manage it. So the outer Ozark border exhibits a moderate level of geophysical complexity. So there's opportunities for a wide range of species to occupy this area. So now talking about core areas and how to develop conservation landscapes, the American Bird Conservancy, I'm using this as an example, and it really speaks to the point. They collect a lot of data on bird occurrence and distribution and habitat characteristics. And they do a rigorous analysis, and they've come to designate the Central Missouri River Hills Important Bird Area to encompass, you can see the outline of it. And this area contains a number of public lands. In fact, it's 19% in public ownership or public management. But these areas are bigger than 500 acres. They form these habitat cores, and there's a lot of opportunity for interconnection between these core areas. And then if you kind of focus down in on Boone County and kind of the southern part of Columbia outside the urban area, that's where Rockbridge Memorial State Park is, and Gans Creek Nature Preserve, again, is contiguous to Rockbridge. So the Missouri Department of Conservation and departments develop these conservation opportunity areas because they're crucial for maintaining Missouri's biodiversity. I can't remember the exact number of conservation opportunity areas there are, but they're focused, they're areas that attract funding and attract attention for managing to protect the resources that are identified within the COAs. And you can see Gans Creek Nature Preserve is within the COA. And Gans Creek Nature Preserve, there's a cave there called Elbow Cave. It's an affluent cave, and there's a number of associated karst features, including sinkholes and swallow holes associated with Elbow Cave. In 2008, just after Columbia purchased the property, I think it was the Missouri Speleological Society found tricolored bat in Elbow Cave. And then this past March, there was another survey, and tricolored bat was again identified in this cave. It's a candidate for federal listing. And in a conversation with bat biologists, I think Roxy had this conversation, because the tricolored bat was identified in 2025 in Elbow Cave, it may indicate that there's some level of resistance to white nose syndrome. That's not proven fact, but it's kind of an interesting observation. whoops, I'm going to go back. Okay. And then overlaid over Rockbridge and the southern part of Boone County is a Greater Bonfim Watershed Initiative. And there are 5 streams, including the stream through Devil's Icebox, Gans Creek, Little Bonfim, and then Bass, Turkey, and Bonfim Creek itself that are recognized as under Section 319 of the Clean Water Act as impaired. So the idea behind the Greater Bonfim Watershed, and it's really impressive what has been accomplished to date. They have a website that has a ton of information, but they recognize the biological significance of cave and karsts and watershed within this area, as well as the ecological services that nature provides. The area highlighted in red is the recharge area for Devil's Icebox. And then you can see Hunter Cave down below in purple. Each recharge area is about 12.9 miles. The entire watershed is about 92 square miles. And you can see that Gans Creek watershed is located in this area. And Gans Creek, of course, runs through what I'm calling Gans Creek Nature Preserve. And a fish faunal study that was conducted in the year 2000 by Jason Facun, and I think he was a primary lead biologist in this study. They identified several fish species that are really adapted to relatively clean, not polluted waters. The issue in these streams is non-point source pollution, kind of agricultural runoff, but also in urban areas where waste is not managed well and it seeps into these streams. You can only imagine that with this initiative in effect and with the 9 elements of the initiative that are providing education and outreach to landowners within the watershed, that these streams are only going to become of better quality as time goes on. So now I'm going to talk about kind of some of the local planning that has gone on in Boone County, Columbia, and then at the site level of Gans Creek Nature Preserve. So in 2025, the Boone County Master Plan was published, and it was a long process to develop. And the overriding goal is to conserve, and with regard to natural resources, is to conserve, protect, and restore Boone County's natural habitats and ecologically significant areas. That sounds really good. Some of the objectives under it are encourage the expansion of park and conservation area boundaries through local and state partnerships together with agencies. And that fits Gans Creek Nature Preserve being contiguous with Rockbridge and having a habitat that has ecological value. Then another objective, Gans Creek is already considered to be buffer lands in the past Boone County Master Plan, or maybe in the current, but they also want to evaluate a sensitive area overlay to supplement this buffer land designation to provide to supplement the existing protections for streams, sinkholes, and karst topography. We feel in the group that's been kind of advocating for managing Gans Creek Nature Preserve, this is an alternative vision of management, is we think that Gans Creek Nature Preserve would merit the elevated protection provided by a sensitive zone overlay. I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, again, it's currently a bufferland recognition. The reason we feel this way is because of the cave and karsts, sensitive resources, Gans Creek itself, and the fact that the soils in the area are extremely erodible. So at the city level in 2023, Columbia, there was a natural resources inventory that was conducted, and it was, and the conclusion of that study provided the following points. They want to protect biodiversity and special features in Columbia. They want to enhance habitat connectivity. They want to mitigate threats to ecological health. They want to manage and restore water resources. This is kind of throughout the city. and they want to support climate resilience. And all 5 of these are directly applicable to Gans Creek Nature Preserve. These are all things that could and should be practiced in this block of land that we'd like to see designated as such. So I want to step back and look at the values of Rockbridge itself. And this is a Gans Creek Wild Area, 850 acres. If you can imagine Gans Creek Nature Preserve existing on its own without Rockbridge, it's 140 acres. It has ecological value, but not near the value it has with connectivity with Rockbridge. Now, what Rockbridge has, it has a large contiguous block of woodland habitat. It, which forms an ecological core supporting source populations of various organisms. It has an outstanding resource. Gans Creek is an outstanding state resource water within the boundaries of Rockbridge. And it has a detailed natural resource management plan. And this last point is significant because Rockbridge has a long history of working to control invasive exotic species, working to restore habitats. There's a lot of research that's going on. There's active stream monitoring along Gans Creek. And Rockbridge has a lot they could share with the city and how Gans Creek Nature Preserve could be managed. And an example of kind of the value of Rockbridge is these are species that are on the bird list for Rockbridge Memorial State Park. And they're also recognized in the breeding bird survey as probable for breeding in Boone County. So it's conceivable that these species could be source populations within Rockbridge. And as we know, source populations provide the number of the birds that radiate outwards into lesser quality habitats. So a core area and a source population enables these species to radiate outwards and to be visible or to be viewed. You can observe them in different places outside of the core area, if that makes sense. So that's a value. Maybe it's just an interpretive value associated with Gans Creek Nature Preserve. So the natural features inventory of the Crane property, as Carolyn alluded to earlier, was the Department of Natural Resources, Division of State Parks, recognizing that the City of Columbia had purchased the Crane property in 2007, communicated with the City of Columbia and offered to do an inventory, a natural features inventory of the southern part of the Crane property, which we'd like to see designated as the Gans Creek Nature Preserve. And the findings from that report were a variety of terrestrial natural communities, woodland forest, glade, an affluent cave. And there's also a heron rookery there that has 13 nests that Audubon or different people have been monitoring over a period of time. And along with the report, we had some recommendations. And one, of course, was to protect the watershed because within Rockbridge, it's an outstanding resource water. The elbow cave and the karst associated with elbow cave is really important. Rockbridge has a lot of experience, obviously, with managing devil's icebox. And there's a great deal of interest in elbow cave and helping the city to manage it, but also to find ways that it could be maybe interpreted. Another recommendation was to restore natural terrestrial communities and control invasive exotic species. Oh yeah, and lastly, we want to build on the partnership between DNR and the City of Columbia. You know, as I mentioned previously, the state park has a lot of experience with managing land, and it can help the city in this way. So if you look at the floristics of what I'm calling Gans Creek Nature Preserve, there's a total number of species, almost 200, including 177 species that are native. It doesn't rank up there with a high quality natural area, but it is notable for sure. Gans Creek Nature Preserve exhibits greater biodiversity, at least potentially, than other Columbia Park lands because of its geophysical complexity and because of its connectivity with Rockbridge Memorial State Park. Over half the native species are matrix species, and those are species that form the background of any type of community. And these will increase, they'll only increase in distribution as with restoration of upland, woodland, and bottomland habitats. So management is going to make this land, there's going to be definite results because the species are there. So I wanted to kind of look at the reserve design, so to speak, of this theoretical or conceptual Gans Creek Nature Preserve, about 140 acres. You can see Rockbridge is connected. There's connectivity between the two sites. We want to protect Elbow Cave and the karst features, the sinkholes, and the great blue heron rookery. Oops, sorry. We want to restore the woodlands and the glades and the cliffs. There's a big issue with invasive exotic species, and that needs to be dealt with. We also want to, the plan would include reforestation of the old bottomland field and prairie/savanna restoration for the old upland fields, which would actually stabilize those and decrease erosion. In fact, the glade, there's a glade, a limestone glade, which is relatively uncommon in Boone County. It's small, but the city has been in there removing eastern red cedar, and the Sierra Club has been cooperating with the city to control bush honeysuckle. And these particular species in the slide, bird's-foot violet is common in this area. The city added a glade mix of seed collected, I think they got from Missouri Wildflower Nursery, and put it overseeded on this glade, that mix. And I think the Cobaea penstemon is a result of that overseeding. So now I want to go through a sequence of the planning at the site level. And this was, we had the city purchased Gans Creek Recreation Area in 2007. The study of the crane property was 2008. In 2010, the Southeast Regional Park Master Plan identified circumscribed an area of about 88 acres and called it Creek Buffer and Natural Preservation Area. So the intent, the City of Columbia Parks and Recreation Department, at that time, the intent was to look at this area as a natural preservation area. And again, they updated the plan in 2018, and they continued to recognize it as a natural preservation area, and they proposed 1.6 miles of multi-use trails in this particular plan. So we get to 2024, and the Columbia Parks and Recreation Department developed they developed a 2024 proposed master plan for this particular site. And I've zoomed in on the area that we're calling the potential Gans Creek Nature Preserve. So it's a whole different story than the previous plans we just looked at. So what's wrong with this picture? Well, as you can see by the stars, there's no protection for cave and karst. In fact, they're in this plan, they're advocating for 10.5 miles of mountain bike trails, the green, the yellow, and the blue. And this blue trail down here is 4.5 miles. The green's a beginner, the yellow is theoretically intermediate, and this would be an advanced mountain bike trail over here. So the trail doesn't even recognize that there's Elbow Cave exists. So there's no protection for the cave and the karst features. There's minimal stream protection. They're talking about a 100-foot buffer along the northern edge of Gans Creek, but they also talk about a stream crossing, and they're not really thinking that, yeah, we could do reforestation in that whole bottomland. Through the discussions we've had with the City of Columbia Parks and Recreation Department, they allude to a token natural resource management objectives. There's no quantifiable action items or budget, even for controlling invasive exotic species like bush honeysuckle. So between 2018 to 24, what the heck happened? Why did this whole plan change so drastically in this period of time? Oh, and I forgot minimum protection for heron rookery, though that's arguable. Some people say 200 feet are fine. I think we feel better with 300 feet protection. Okay, so is this a conflict of interest or poor planning on the part of the City of Columbia Parks and Recreation Department? This is a recreation plan. And in my experience as a conservation biologist, the first step when you have you take ownership of a piece of property is you get an idea of the natural resources that occur, and you develop a natural resources management plan for that property. So that's the first step generally. And this particular plan that was presented by the city, it lacks the vital information a comprehensive natural resource management plan provides. You need to know what you have, because then you know the capability of the land to support the recreation that you would like to see. But in this case, the Blue Trail, 4.5 miles of mountain bikes, do not really take into consideration the cave and the karst or the stream. And as David will talk about later on, he will zoom further in on the soils. The 2008 Crane report was not considered in this plan. Funds were donated for mountain bike trails. The Parks and Recreation staff are mountain bike advocates, and nothing wrong with that, but that's part of what they do and what they like for recreation. The plan really follows the money and ignores the ecology of the nature preserve. Anytime somebody wants to donate funds for something, that's a great thing. There's no way you can criticize that. But the agency that accepts those funds still needs to go through the steps in recognizing the value of the resource, developing a natural resource management plan, and then looking at what's reasonable for, in terms of recreation based on the capacity of the resource to support that. So looking at the status of the Gans Creek Nature Preserve today, that the city did present this at the city council meeting, I believe in December, and the green and yellow trails were approved by the city council for development. The blue trail was put on hold to really restart the planning process and then on that particular trail. The Sierra Club, the Friends of Rockbridge, and other organizations and environmentalists, we've been meeting together and building support for conceptually the Gans Creek Nature Preserve, which would be an alternative vision as compared to that 2024 plan. We're up against a sizable and well-funded mountain bike advocacy group, including Parks and Recreation staff that are promoting mountain bike trails. And I'm not saying this is exactly conflict of interest. That's not an accusation by any means, but it could be viewed in that way, if you didn't know the players, the people that work in the city parks system. So again, lastly, the Sierra Club is actively involved in glade restoration project, and there are a few of us on this call that are in that picture there. And we've been working to remove invasive honeysuckle species and autumn olive, working together with the City of Columbia Parks and Recreation Department. So, Gans Creek Nature Preserve, is it only going to exist in concept, or is it going to become a reality? There's a lot of precedent for recognizing it as such. In our group, we feel like some promises have been broken, but my question is the opportunity lost? And I would like to think it isn't, that we can still, achieve this vision. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dave. Let me see. I don't know how to do that.
Okay, I need to figure out how to share my screen. Carolyn,
What do I do? Okay,
do I
good.
just say share and that'll work?
Yes, now that I've stopped Mike sharing, you can start.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I need to end this show. I need to do this, and then I hit share. And I need to tell it which screen since I have two screens. So that's the screen I need to share, and I need to start my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, can you all see this slide here?
Yes, you're not, there it is. Now it's PowerPoint. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
The
All
slide.
right. Great. Okay, well, that was a fantastic presentation. And I'd just like to follow up that presentation by Mike and talk. I just have about 15 minutes. So, bear with me. I'm going to talk about some of the sensitive natural features and the ecological values of Gans Creek to augment what Mike has already talked about. And again, this is where we're at in the winter of 2024. The city Parks and Recreation Department did present this plan for potential adoption to create these trails: the green, the gold, and the blue trail. The green and the gold trail were approved by the city council. The gold trail had some opposition. The blue trail had more opposition. One of the focal points there was the fact that the Great Blue Heron Rookery location was somewhere in here, was only buffered by 200 feet. And so the trails came as close as 200 feet to that rookery, and some folks felt like that wasn't enough. But there were other problems with this trail, the type of trail and the density of trail. You can see the trail crosses this steep upland drainage, one, two, three, four times right there. We thought that was excessive, some of us. But now, that's sort of a setup. The special features of Gans Creek Recreation Area, just to add to what Mike said, there's a high diversity of geophysical settings or habitat types there and associated natural communities. Gans Creek itself is an outstanding state resource water within Gans Creek Recreation Area downstream. Mike talked about some of the special aquatic species and other species. There's a great blue heron rookery there, which is pretty special. There's no other great blue heron rookery in Boone County that was recorded in earlier surveys. There's the tricolor bat in Elbow Cave, and there's the cave itself. And one thing that is very important, it does have a shared border with Gans Creek Wild Area within Rockbridge Memorial State Park. And so that area is a large connected core of natural habitat, and it makes Gans Creek south of the creek there especially important. And then there's three sensitive features, and I'll talk about these more. Cave and sinkholes called karst features, highly erodible soils, and steep slopes. And these are all recognized by the 2023 Natural Resources Inventory and Columbia Imagined here. On page 8, this Columbia Natural Resources Inventory says Columbia faces environmental challenges due to its karst erodible soils, and variously steep sloped areas. Highly erodible soils combined with steep slopes further contribute to regional soils erosion and sediment transport, which negatively affect water quality. So we don't want to move sediment into Gans Creek. And then from Columbia Imagine, three typical features and conditions that are classified as sensitive areas include karst topography, erodible soils, and steep slopes. So those three things all exist in what Mike defined, proposed as the Gans Creek Natural Area. And, and this is to illustrate the connectivity that Mike talked about. Here's our area, Gans Creek Recreation Area. It shares a common border right here with Gans Creek Wild Area within Rockbridge Memorial State Park, which is the black lines here. So The woodlands, floodplain, and creek represent large connected core habitats for plant and animal species. And Gans Creek itself is an outstanding state resource water. And just to contrast Gans Creek Recreation Area with Rhett's Run, this is Rhett's Run Trails, which is kind of a semi famous or famous bike area in North Columbia. This is Interstate 70 here. There's a rock quarry right here, right up against these trails, rock quarry here. So the value here of there's no core area that is formed by the area there at Rhett's Run. So the value of Gans Creek Recreation Area is much, much higher than the value of the area around Rhett's Run. Okay, so there are three resources I wanted to talk about that are sensitive to disturbance. One is steep slopes that are rated as very sensitive for road and trail construction and erosion hazard. And this is coming from the Natural Resource Conservation Service Web Soil Survey. So this is the NRCS's soil maps. So they do exist. They are very severe for road and trail construction, erosion hazard. And here's some of the slopes. This is within Gans Creek Recreation Area. So the tops here are about 60 feet above the valley bottoms there. And so that a 5-story building is about 60 or 70 feet tall. So indeed, these are very steep slopes. The two other features that I wanted to highlight here, one is karst features, which include sinkholes and a cave. There is a cave here, Elbow Cave. This is a diagram of part of the cave. There's a younger Mike in the mouth of that cave in circa 2007. There are tricolored bats in the cave. That's a rare species. And then there are sinkholes here and here and here. There are also sinkholes further to the east. There are 3 more sinkholes on the eastern side of this property here, and I'll show you why that's important. And then something that Mike didn't talk about, the soils on the uplands here are very highly erodible. And this, again, that's not just me saying it, they really are. They have a high K factor based on the Natural Resources Conservation Service Web Soil Survey maps. And it's very apparent if you're out here on the ground. Right here, there's a very disturbing gully formation here in these highly erodible soils. This is only a little over 200 feet from the mouth of this gully to the slopes that go down into into Elbow Cave. So this is a narrow area, but there are erosions areas all along in the uplands here. This is very highly erodible soil, very hazardous to try to build trails on. So I'll go into the karst. This is from the December 23 Natural Resources Inventory. Karst is a type of landscape characterized by the presence of springs, sinkholes, losing streams, and caves created as groundwater dissolves soluble rock, offering a ready pathway for contaminants to reach the groundwater. So the problem is there's highly erodible soils at Gans Creek South, and there's sinkholes and there's cave. And if you cause erosion in the uplands, the soil washes right into the caves and the sinkholes, filling up the caves, destroying the habitat for whatever animals are there, invertebrates mainly. And also the water is connected right to the stream. So the Elbow Cave is an affluent cave, so it operates just pretty much like this. I thought this was pretty cool vintage photograph of some sinkholes. They call these swallow holes because they're small. They're small sinkholes, but they can be very deep. There's one that's about 12 feet deep. and not very far across on this area. So the other thing is I want to talk about is the erodible soils. There are gully erosion areas starting in the uplands that are not very sloping at all. You can see that this upland is not sloping much, but there is erosion starting, gully erosion. This is substantial gully erosion at the head of this little gully that Mike is standing in. This is the one that I showed you. A lot of soil is being lost. The soil is going directly into the creek. That represents pollution of the creek, sediment pollution in the creek. And I think we need to be doing everything we can to stop this gully erosion. It's no joke. It's no joke, guys. We don't need to be doing things that cause erosion or make it worse. We need to be trying to stop it. If you look at a couple of the trails over in Rockbridge Memorial State Park on these highly erodible soils, this is Springbrook Trail and Deer Run Trail, you can see that they're damaged from erosion, and the soil goes, ends up downstream, and there's surface damage. And when the soil is gone, these areas are going to take a long time, decades and decades, to come back. And, the soils or the trails are now being rerouted in these areas. And to me, all that does is provide a new area for erosion to form. So you're moving the trail to a new place that isn't eroded and not keeping it in these places that are completely untenable. And so we don't need to be doing that, I don't think, at Gans Creek Recreation Area, Gans South. But trails are certainly compatible with management of a natural area. These are trails in Gans Creek Wild Area within Rockbridge Memorial State Park. And I think the key is that these are footpaths, and they do cause less erosion than heavily used bike trails. And I think this is the kind of thing we would like. We're not advocating for no trails. I don't think Mike or I are advocating for that at all. I think we think trails are great there. But, the other thing is during the construction phase, these are photographs of construction of the Green Trail there at north of the creek. And, when these are not very steep areas north of the creek where this trail was constructed, but to construct this tread, this is a flat tread here, the natural slope of this hill, which, naturally sloped down there, had to be removed, the soil placed on the downhill side, and here too as well. And then there's a little upland drainage right here, and there's a pipe that's designed to keep water flowing underneath the trail here. But this is an image of a storm event that happened during the trail construction, and you can see the upland drainage way there to the right that's carrying sediment down toward the floodplain, going to end up in the creek. And we have already caused sedimentation into Gans Creek. There's no doubt about it. With the trail construction of the Green Trail, we're set to do it more with the Yellow Trail. I just hope that we decide not to do this with the Blue Trail. You'll recall that there were 4 crossings of a steep upland drainage way on the north side of the creek, and that's going to cause a lot of sedimentation. And let's just look at the users, the user groups. I think the point here is that there are people who like nature trails, and there are people who want mountain bike trails. We have already constructed or are set to construct about 6 miles of mountain bike trail at Gans Creek Recreation Area. It seems like a balanced approach to go ahead and construct some footpaths, some nature trails. Almost all of the trails in the city of Columbia are multi-use trails, There's about 10 miles designed for mountain bikes, but less than 5 miles for pedestrian only use. And, you know, multi-use trails are necessary, a part of the transportation network. They're not ideal for either bike riders or for people on foot. So we do have some bike rider trails over here. Why don't we make some nature trails just in terms of user groups? And as I think Mike pointed out, the nature trails are more compatible with conservation of the natural resources in the Gans Creek recreation area. But okay, so this is sort of a bird's eye view of the parks of the city and some other public lands. Here's Gans Creek Recreation Area here. And the area that Mike had outlined as Gans Creek Nature Preserve is here down south of the creek. The gold areas are nature areas. This is from a 2023 map that was produced by the city. And the green areas are parks. And you know, what's the difference between this and all the rest of these? Well, it's right up against a core natural habitat. I mean, uh, if all of these public parks in Columbia are a herd of horses, what we have here at Gans Creek is a unicorn. It is different. It is different. It is within American Bird Conservancy important bird area, and it is within a Missouri Department of Conservation Opportunity Area. These are not fly-by-night things. It's not just me saying it. These are real things. That area, this area here, is unique in terms of the natural resource value among city park holdings, and we need to treat it as such, right? So this is the area that Mike called the potential Gans Creek Nature Preserve. And again, what we're really talking about is the area south of Gans Creek and what we are going to do there. The city proposed a mountain bike trail construction that would have crossed this drainage 4 times. This is a steep upland drainage and a lot of trail up here. This area between the drainage that goes into the cave and this really bad eroded and it's eroding right now. I mean, it's actively eroding area, the gully right here. This space is only 200 feet. So I think we would like to consider developing hiking trails south of Gans Creek to meet the needs of nature trail users and to protect the creek, the soils, and the karst features. And we want to maintain the connected core ecosystem values compatible with Gans Creek Wild Area to the west. So that's all I have to say. So you can
Okay.
take it away from me.
All right. Well, thank you, David and Mike. And we will open it for questions now. So you need to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. You can also, if you prefer, raise your hand. If I change my viewing here, I might be able to see that. Does anyone have a question that you'd like to ask?
I have a question.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I'd be curious for different folks to chime in and kind of give us some feedback on, you know, this concept of a Gans Creek Nature Preserve. That's my question.
Okay, and Christine has her hand up. So Christine, you want to?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, is there any way? I mean, has anybody talked about getting a provision that, like the green trail that they put in, some of those little ravines, they're small, but they're pretty steep. You know, that you had pictures of, David. Is there any provision that, given the elements, the rain, whatever, that they have to close the trails, or like you said, if you reroute them, you're just killing more land. But where's, like if they really messed up here by putting these in here,
Well,
and they need like,
I don't, I don't know what that is, Christine, but what I'd like to point out, I think, is that in general, the mountain bike community doesn't want to ride on trails when they're too wet, because they absolutely know that riding on wet trails will tend to, harm the trails. So, you know, I don't want to make out like the mountain bike community is irresponsible or anything like that. I don't know about the rules, what kind of rules the city could put in. In general, most of the folks that ride mountain bikes are not going to ride on that trail when it's too wet and muddy. There will be some that do. I mean, but in general, I don't think that's the case.
I do know that Rockbridge State Park posts when the trails are wet and you can't ride mountain bikes on them. So I don't know.
Yeah, the city could do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack has his hand up. Jack, you'll
Yeah,
make sure
I was just wondering, there's a lot of natural erosion going on there. How big is the watershed that goes into Gans Creek in square miles? Or, in other words, 1 inch of rain on that watershed, how much water is going to go in that creek? Basically, is what I'm
Well,
asking you.
Mike may have a better answer than me, but my answer is I don't know. But I do know that the area of the floodplain that the Gold Trail is going in, based on the Natural Resource Conservation Service web soil survey maps, is frequently flooded. So that that area where the Gold Trail is going north of the creek is going underwater. There's no doubt about that. And if NRCS is right, and they're the authority, then it'll go under water quite a bit. So, but I don't know the size, the watershed. I'm not a hydrologist, and I doubt that there's been any real detailed hydrologic studies of that watershed.
Well, what I'm getting at is, when you go into federal parks and things where they have the federal conservation people manage them, they put uh, logs across the trail to siphon the water off the trail down to the side and run it away. It didn't look like any of that was going on there, but whether or not you get the bike trail or not, you may have to do that kind of stuff just to keep natural erosion from taking this stuff out. Because I know Missouri soils are hugely erosive. I lived in Lake St. Louis, and the Peru Creek watershed that ran into that lake, it took so much topsoil with it. We used to have to dredge that lake out about every 5 years. And I mean, we'd spend $1 million dredging that lake. That's how much erosion was coming in that thing. So, because it was a big watershed. I mean, it went all the way back to Warrenton. So that's the thing. If you have a big watershed feeding this thing, you really got to take some steps just to control natural erosion. And then the bike trail thing, that's on top of it. Uh, yeah, I agree. I think this ought to be a nature preserve. I mean, it's got a lot of natural features and caves, and there's no doubt about it. I mean, we don't need to put a bike trail out there. I mean, that's just asking for more trouble, you know.
Bill Mees has his hand up, so let's go to him next.
I'd like David to mention that these two presentations are by people that are not opposed to bicycles or mountain bikes. That is not the issue. I know for a fact that David Diamond is a huge mountain bike rider. I'm talking thousands of miles a year. This is about preserving some property from mountain bikes. We're not against mountain bikes, We're just opposed to mountain bikes in this particular location. The
Yeah,
other thing is the current plan, blue plan, is to cross the creek. That area is a floodplain. Now, that doesn't mean that it has 6 inches of water standing in it all the time. There are plenty of times when there'll be a small downpour. Water isn't standing, but water has come down from the height, and the soil is soft. And I'm sorry, but unless you have some way of controlling bicycles on that, you're going to have a problem in that floodplain. Maybe not on top, where the soil is still somewhat dry because of its geography. But I have been out at Rockbridge Memorial State Park where people are not supposed to ride their bicycles, their mountain bikes on soft soil, and you're getting passed by people. So unless you have some way to, maybe we can have um, Gabe Huffington in a small shack out there, suggesting that people not ride when the soil is soft. But unless you have something like that, you can forget it.
well, Bill, I will confirm that I peaked out on my mountain bike at 4,000 miles during the COVID year, and I rode my bike more miles than I rode in a car in the COVID year. So I am an avid mountain biker. I just not here. I just don't want them there.
We have a question in the chat, and the question is, where does everything stand with the south portion? And is there anything people can do right now to advocate for this area? Either one of you want to take that?
Oh, yeah, I kind of printed something in there already, but yeah, so, and Dave, correct me or add to what I say, but at the city council meeting in December, I believe, when the green trail was approved and the yellow trail was approved, there was opposition both for the yellow, as Dave mentioned, and the blue trails, and it's only because the Sierra Club, Friends of Rockbridge, and other environmental groups and environmentalists showed up. The only reason why the blue trail was put on hold was because of that advocacy. And, you know, it's really a shoddy, in my mind, it's a shoddy process. It seems like the 2024 plan was on the fast track to get it developed. And without the advocacy of these different environmental groups, the blue trail would have been approved. And it's really shoddy planning. That's the only way you can describe it. But as it stands now, the city is going to, you know, I'm not sure the timing of this, but there will be a planning process to solely look at the areas south of Gans Creek and look at, you know, how that will be developed going forward. As I mentioned in my response on chat, there is a very strong mountain bike lobby. There are a lot of people in Columbia that would like that, they, they do a lot of mountain biking and they don't really see, they aren't attuned to the values that kind of this particular area to the degree that, you know, those of us that understand what we have see it in a different way. And what we need to do is help others see it in the way that we see it, because our what we are the alternative we'd like to propose is viable and it's realistic. And as Dave mentioned, there aren't a lot of places in the Columbia Park system that have hiking only trails. I think the project to restore the area would have a lot of community support. I think it could have a lot of community involvement. I think it would be, kind of it'd be recognized as being a stellar project that the City of Columbia Parks and Recreation could be very proud of if we designated a nature preserve and managed it as such?
I just want to add on to that the recording of this will be posted on our YouTube channel, which is Sierra Club Mid-Missouri Group. And one thing that I would recommend as follow-up advocacy is to, take the link from that and share it and email or write or phone your city council member and the mayor and ask them to review this. Because I think that there is not, at least in my understanding, there's not a lot of people who know all this great information that this team has put together. And we need to get that information shared with the decision makers. Okay, let me turn to Christine. You've got your hand up. Christine, okay.
Sorry, Sutu has a question.
I want to make sure that you all know that we have an organized hike for Gans lovers and people who have no idea of what is going on out there. There was such a huge concern at Earth Day. We made a presentation to the city council and they just said, we've already made up our mind. So it is my belief that if enough of the public knows and has an opportunity to see what they've done already and to look at the area, I wish there was a way that they could redo the planning for the yellow trail. Why does it have to be so close to the creek? That's one thing. I love the idea of a natural area, a nature preserve, to be used for forest bathing, to be used as the Native Americans would tread softly on the path. But please, I want to get those beautiful videos that you gentlemen have just made.
It's taped.
So that the public, when we meet them on Saturday, 5:30 in the Gans parking lot, we have a permit to do this. This is all legit. And Christine is going to lead us on a hike showing us the blue area, the gold area, and the green area that has been done. And then we invite people to express themselves with the city council. And as Carolyn said, the mayor, and how about the newspaper kids? I mean, really, people don't know that this is happening. So please consider coming on Saturday. And thank you for keeping it going.
Okay, and I just want to share for those not reading the chat that Dee Dawkin, who's a member of this team working on the nature preserve idea, says that Park said they want to finish the green trail and let it heal before the public process on the blue trail begins. And they haven't contacted Sierra Club yet about starting that process. So, okay, Howard, your hand is up.
Hey, David, you mentioned a gully, and I'm not clear about whether those are gullies that are due to the trail construction or whether those are gullies that are the result of natural erosion. Which are they?
They are not due to the trail construction. They're gullies that probably started based on, I don't know how they started. They're probably from earlier land use practices when the private landowner had the area in fescue. So no, the gullies that I'm talking about aren't from the very recent construction. They're good. It's just been done in July. So no, those gullies aren't from that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any more hands up. Does anyone have any additional questions or comments you'd like to make? You don't have to raise your hand if you don't know how to do that. It's you could just it is under reactions, but you can just also just unmute yourself and speak.
I have to highlight the erosion issue down in the wild area. For years, I've been watching this beautiful bottomland where there's a spring, and it's just a fantasy land, really. And it's just washing away. It's just going. Goodbye. The soil is just falling off the edges into the creek and disappearing. It's so sad. And this is gonna add to that.
So does anyone know what the timeline is on the construction on the Gold Trail?
Yes, according to things that have been posted on the internet, the Gold Trail will be constructed after the Missouri Interscholastic Cycling League event, which is September 20th and 21st. So construction on the Gold Trail won't start until after that, and should be finished this fall, according to what I've read.
Because there's a question in this chat about, is the Gold Trail unstoppable, or are we asking for it to be reevaluated? So
I do not know that. Close
Okay.
to I'd say close to unstoppable.
Well, it would take a
I-
vote of city council because they voted to spend the money. So we would have to get city council to reconsider, which is extremely difficult, I imagine. So
To me, you know, the Gold Trail is the compromise. I mean, I think a lot of us didn't want the Gold Trail at all, but you know that was sort of the compromise. We'll take the Gold Trail. You can have the Gold Trail. We'll please don't do the Blue Trail.
okay,
Uh,
so
Carolyn, this is Jack. If you Google the Gans Creek watershed on the internet, I mean, it really tells a pretty horrifying story, to be honest with you. It says key tributaries within the watershed include Bass Creek, Turkey Creek, Fox Hollow Branch, Smith Branch, Devil's Icebox Branch, Clear Creek, and Mahan Creek. And it talks about a mixture of land uses and cultivated areas and the different sources of pollution and runoff, cultivated crops, livestock, urban areas, forests, and other. And it talks about the karst geology, and it basically tells you the story how fragile this whole thing is. And you might, maybe the council would understand the problem if they really understand what it is without the trails, that it's very fragile and it is being eroded, and it's going to cause problems if you put in bike trails or even walking trails for that matter, if you don't put logs in to run the runoff off the trail, as otherwise the trail's going to become eroded. um, I spent a lot of years backpacking in the mountains, and I'm telling you, the erosion in some places was unbelievable. Because unless the conservation people got after it and they fixed it, they repaired it. They hauled rock in, logs, timbers, they built bridges, they did all kinds of stuff, but it took a lot of money and time. So,
and we could just let it be natural in a nature preserve and not do that.
right, and then but it will, like Dee mentioned, it's going to disappear. I mean, eventually, because of the big storms we're getting these days.
Right.
Think
Oh,
about
you're
it.
right about that.
If we get a 4-inch
Yeah.
rain or 6-inch rain, that creek is going to be all out of its banks.
Yeah, I remember there was a thing when we were looking at the construction of the trail, you know, somebody said, well, there was a 3-inch rain, you know, like incredulous, like, well, you can't judge it on a 3-inch. There was a huge rain. Yeah. Guess what? There's a lot of big rains and there's going to be more. So yeah, that's the problem in this area.
So I'd
Yeah.
like to encourage anyone who's on the or the webinar this evening to reach out to us through the SC .midmo.group@gmail.com if you'd like to get involved or contact, somebody that that's working on this, because it's going to take a community to get this to be revisited. Because as Dave and Mike have said, the mountain biking community is very strong, very active, and they, are get the children to advocate for them. So, and as and we thought, it was a compromise position. We did agree to the yellow and the green trails. But now that we've had time to go in and study this area more and revisit it from the work that Mike did previously, it is very clear that this area needs to be preserved, and not just for us, but for the wildlife that lives there. Which we, Mike talked some about that, but it often gets lost in the shuffle that the heron rookery was already harassed and part of it moved after the cross-country trail was built in the Gans Creek Recreation Area. And at that time, we were assured that the cross-country trail would not impact the, there was two parts to the heron rookery then. We were assured that they would be fine. They were leaving a big enough buffer. Well, that was not true. And those birds and those nests moved. So those herons, I should say. And so it's just, we as humans don't know exactly what these animals need to be able to habitate in their habitat and to survive. There's a lot of, as Mike said, there's a lot of disagreement about how much space you need to give herons in their rookeries. So I think it's important that we remember to keep the wildlife that lives there as part of this and not just focus on the human recreation. So I would encourage anybody who can to help us, letters to the editor, any kind of thing like that you can do would be greatly appreciated. And you can coordinate with us to the extent that you would like to. All right, with that, if there's no further questions or comments, we might wrap up. So let me just ask a pause here one more time and see if anyone would like to join the conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
I put my email in the chat if anybody wants it.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone, for participating.
I likewise put mine in the chat, and thanks again, everybody.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody joining, and David and Mike for doing all the work that you've done to put this together. We really very much appreciate it. All right, have a good night, everyone,
Yes.
and this will be on YouTube.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for coming.